So we're going to do a quick overview of laying out this part here. Now it may be a little bit difficult to see, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to lay out these holes, the first two holes, for operations in the drill press. So in order to get anything with a level of accuracy, it really should be laid out. So we're going to go over the first step right here. Essentially we're going to mark a line down the center and then mark where the other holes are, and then and do what's called center punching so that we are able to find it in the drill press. So first things first, what we're going to do is use our layout die here on this table, and it's just as simple as pulling out the die here, it's not toxic, and painting it on. Okay, and you want to cover the whole surface so that as you scribe, it will show up. It will be bright because you're essentially scratching this off, and it dries reasonably quick. But not quick enough for the video, so we're going to set that off to the side, and I have my part that I had right here. And we're going to bring this back into view on what we're going to do. So if we have a 3/4 inch square stock and we have a center line here, very simple math, we have 3/8 or 0.375. We need to make a mark down the center. And then our first hole is at 0.469 and our second hole is 1.094. Okay, so the first thing is we want to get a baseline here, and we can do that in a couple different ways. A couple tools that you're going to want, point scribe here, and you can also use a scale to do this as well. What you would end up doing is finding the mark here that indicates 3/8, lining it up, making a line here, making a line here, and then going across and then doing a line down this way. And that is totally suitable, but when you have better tools than that, we're going to use them. So what we're going to do now that we've painted this, and I've given you a slight alternative method, we're going to go over here to the granite plate and we're going to finish out this operation. So this right here is a surface gauge, or a height gauge, I'm sorry. And what it's sitting on is a granite plate. Now this granite plate is a very precision piece of equipment, and it should not be abused. And abusing it is getting it dirty, using hammers on it, putting inappropriate tools on there. So we want to avoid that at all costs. We want to treat this like it's the surface of our car, the paint. It's just treat it delicately and it'll last forever. So again, we said we wanted 375. How do we achieve that? This height gauge right here, we're going to go ahead and turn that on, and we have a value here that was stored in here, and we can go up and down, and that tip, as you can see right here, is just touching the surface, and then we can do a 0 absolute, and now the surface is 0 inches. Right down to 0 at 0. So on our project we were at 0.375, so let's go up here. I'm not sure if you can see the digital readout or not, but we're going to go to 0.375 on the money here. And there is a lock if you choose to use it. Sometimes it causes it to move just ever so slightly. Of course, the lock was actually on 375. Okay, so now we'll tip this over and make sure that that's flat on here. And I'm going to try to get out of frame. And what we can do is, as long as everything's deburred and clean, we can start here and run right across that and run back. And then when we look in our camera, you can see that we have a nice line going across there. If we want it a little darker, we can do it a little bit more. This is more of a measuring tool than a marking tool, but the carbide tip allows us to do the marking and give us a perfect line at 375 thousandths. Okay, so the next step is again, we can go back to the scale and point scribe method if we so choose. However, there's other ways of doing it that are accurate, probably more accurate. First thing is on here, we have what's called a knee. As long as it's sitting flat here, we know that this surface right here is perpendicular, perfectly perpendicular to here, and this is perpendicular to there as well. So what we can do in this case, we're going to grab our print again, and it is fully acceptable to try to find where this mark is and mark it here, but when you have odd numbers like 469, it's a little bit easier sometimes to make it a little closer to what we want. So we're going to take the lock off here. We're going to roll up to 469. Okay. Sometimes it's hard to get it right on there, but if you take your time, you can do so. Alright, so we're going to be close. Now, the next thing is the surface that we filed and got nice and pretty and square from the last video. You're going to want that down because that's where it's starting from. And then we're going to make sure that it's lining up with this surface here and here to make sure it's sitting up straight. And by holding down on this, kind of hard to see when my arm's in the way, we can take our 469 and we can gently scribe that across. And then our next dimension was 1.094, so we can go up to 1.094. Okay, and do the like process of scratching that across there. Okay, so this is what you actually see. I'm going to kind of roll it around a little bit so you can see where those things are marked. And that right there is how you accurately get something, get those two holes scribed. So that's, again, one way of doing it. Other people have tried, and it is possible to use the caliper method. I don't recommend it because typically your calipers don't have carbide tips on there. So if you were to roll out and do like 469 on the dial, you could go from the end and kind of drag it across. Again, it can work, but you're going to wear your tools out, and that's not really suitable. We have other tools to be able to do that. Okay, so I already talked a little bit about how to make the lines here, and the last thing that I promised is how to center punch. Now, a traditional way of center punching is that you would have a solid center punch, and you would take it over to the anvil on the vise, and you would line it up on the intersection, and you hit it with a hammer. This is an automatic center punch, and it'll do it for you. So how we do that very quickly is that it takes a little bit of time and effort towards seeing, but what I like to do is drag the tip kind of inside of the lines and feel where they are and where they intersect. And then once I felt where I got the center, then you can push down, and what it does is it will leave a nice little mark right there at the intersection. Okay, and if you want it a little deeper, repeat the process. So we're going to go ahead and do that with this over here so we can get on to our drilling.